It's Christmas. I wanted to do a video real quick. Maybe not. But this is if you want to lay this hip out, and I don't mean lay the hip out to cut the hip to fit it. I mean lay out the edge of the hip. So if you have the hip, there's the pitch cut. You know, here's the hip. And then, so what the layout would be like you're laying on a wall. I'm going to lay out these marks where the jack rafter is going to be, you know, that's where the jack's going to go, like that. Now, why would you do that? Why on earth would you go through the trouble to lay out a hip rafter? Well, I've done a lot of jobs where you end up measuring in the hip, and then you measure in, you know, you'll pull your tape on the last common rafter, and you'll kind of like see where it's square, and then you'll get a measurement and all that stuff. Folks, I'm telling you, doing this kind of thing, it's an incredible waste of effort and time when you're able to just calculate where this goes. Now, I would say, well, let me first go through what the math would be. And this is not theoretical math, but I'm gonna use that term just because I'm not gonna actually do the numbers. Let me extend this ridge out a little bit. If I have my, you know, where my ridge is, you know, my this end to this end of the ridge, right? And there, you know, my other hip rafter is going to go here. There's the common. If I would divide this in half, and that's my midpoint, that's my center. And what's in the clear between, you know, 16 inches or 24 inches, 22 and a half. So if it's 22 and a half, I'm not even sure if that's right. I'm not going to waste time thinking about it. But so what do we got? We got 11 and a quarter this way, and 11 and a quarter this way. That's my in the clear. So if I strike that line and put a layout there, and then go, you know what I mean, and set ahead all the way until you get, so let's say, now you're going to, obviously in a ridge, you're not going to have two layouts, but, you know, I'm trying to just show this where it can be understood. So let's say here's the center, and let's say we had 10 layouts here, and 10 on this side. We get to here, and you would want to know between this point, and if you can see this point, it's not exactly where, if you extended this hip all the way through, this point is where I would need to start to descend these jack rafters. Now, it's theoretical. I'm not actually there's nothing going to go in here, but I need to use this as a point of reference in order to begin subtracting off. How do I determine that? So I had a measuring tape. So let's say if it was 24, and, you know, right here I've got, what is that, 3 inches? So I've got 3 inches. So what would I do? I would say, you know, it'd be 21 inches from this point is what I'm going to descend with. So the jack is dropping 21 inches because I've got to go from here. Now, how would I know what that point is? We all know this is 7/16. It's a common framing. You know, it's just a common knowledge. And they say, well, why is that? Well, you know, if you look at this, I call it the little like Star of David inside. If you erase all these lines, you can clearly see a shape Well, you know, if I put a square, and then I have the same square, and I rotate it 90 degrees, I'm gonna get. That's not good. Let me try to draw a square. And then I put the same square. And what I've done is I've taken this square and I've just twisted it 90 degrees so that I can now use the diagonal of this thing and subtract it from the length of these legs. And then I get kind of like the rise of these little triangles here. Once I know that, now I can use that math to determine other parts. So we go back to our hip intersection here. Let me get rid of this. Now if I draw this line all the way through, I don't even know if I can actually do this while I'm looking at the phone. It'll look crazy. You know, and so you end up with these little triangles, and it's like you're solving for this. And once you get that dimension, now you can solve for this one. And it kind of unlocks the ability to solve a lot of these. But what we're actually trying to get to, ultimately speaking, is you're solving for this dimension here. This little piece. And why? Because if you erase all of this, I don't really got to erase that because that's part of the framing there. But what it is you're trying to determine from here to this point, what's that distance? So if I know what my layout is, you know, and I know where the end of my ridge is, and I know this is 3/4 here, right? And this is whatever distance it is. Now I can get this point to this point, and then I just add this with 7/16. And then from there, I use my math going the other way. Because I know how much I've got to add to that. If I subtract from here, and I subtract this distance here from 24, I know that I've got to step down that much.